Kaushal Patel, luxury realtor in America's finest city. Your dream home in paradise is waiting. Buying your piece of paradise with Kaushal. Presented on IQ Podcast at Attorney King Studios. Sponsored by Oscar Gastelum, president of Mortgage Hub Incorporated. MortgageHub.loans. Now, Kaushal Patel.
Hope you are having a fantastic week, fantastic day. I'm Kaushal Patel with Windermere Homes Estates. And it is welcome to my podcast, Buying Your Piece of Paradise with Kaushal. Looking out the window right now, a little May gray, which is usual this time of year, but hopefully that marine layer will burn off and we'll have nice sunny skies and it will be paradise again. It's always paradise, even if it's gloomy here. Oh, you know what we've all noticed in the last year that home prices have really skyrocketed. Buying that piece of paradise really has become unattainable for many San Diegans. Property values have gone up more than 10% in San Diego and even more in many neighborhoods. So how are these homes appraising for these, just crazy prices? I'd like to bring in my expert, appraiser, Sidney Loiseau, who's been in the appraisal world for almost 2 decades. I don't know how that's possible. Did you start when you were 5? Because you look like you're 20. And so you're the one that I have to give my left kidney to, right?
Absolutely.
All joking aside, we're not allowed to do that. But, what goes through your mind when you see some of these purchase prices as you're going out to an appraisal?
It's a reminder of what was happening maybe 12 years ago into 2007, 2008 market when everything was literally flying off the market. It's really tough, for an appraiser to support list prices these days because, as you're saying, the market is growing so fast that, our calculations are heavily based on the market increase month by month. And I think what's super important for whether it's homeowners or realtors alike is to concentrate on closed sales, but the contract date, because all of our adjustments are essentially made on the contract date, not the sale date. So if you have a property that closed in January, hopefully no one's using a sale back in January, and the contract date for that property was in December, the growth of the market is 6 months relative to 5 months, which is huge when you're making an adjustment on a neighborhood that's growing at 2.5% per month. The adjustment factors are widely different. So, it's really important as an appraiser not only to pick what I like to call more competitive data than comparable data, and hopefully we can get a little bit more into that. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's frantically every day it's getting tougher and tougher. And that backs also, people are making offers that's not contingent on appraisal, but people still want to know, well, what is my property worth? How much more am I really paying over the market? So really tough is an understatement in what's happening in my industry right now.
Yeah, I hear that from lenders, and we're going to be talking to the president of Mortgage Hub, Oscar Gastelum. He is going to be joining us in just a little bit. But, some more questions that I have for you. Appraisers use comps, which are sold homes. So if those homes have sold, how do the values keep going up? I mean, so a home, let's say, has sold for $850 in a certain neighborhood, mm-hmm. and there's an offer price for $950 or $1 million. How is that even? How is that justifiable, and how do you justify it to the lender?
Yeah, Kaushal, that's an awesome and an excellent question. What we do essentially is building a model, right? So let's take our subject property or your list property. Let's say that this property has 5 features. It has the swimming pool. It's on a canyon rim. It has tennis courts. It's a really nice property. You guys can imagine this, right?
Yeah, I'd like to live there. Sign me up.
It's been completely remodeled. And let's say that it has a view of the ocean, okay? So what I like to do is pull my comparable data. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm trying to see how many comparables out there that have the 5 features that my subject property does. Let's just say I found 5 comps, but one of the property has 3 of those features. What I want to do is figure out through paired sales analysis what each feature brings. So let's say the tennis court brings in $75,000. I put that off to the side. The swimming pool brings in $50,000. Okay, let's table that. The remodeled home brings in $100,000. So as I'm building up these models, that's exactly what we're doing. We're saying, okay, yes, the last property sold for $850. But let's add in all of these attributes to the property, and that's what helps support that value. I think a lot of people, the misconception is that appraisers come out to debunk value. Oh, I don't like granite countertops, minus 10 grand. It's not the case. We see a list price, and yes, once we see that list price, we can't unsee the price, but we go out there and go, is there enough market data to support this price? And exactly that's what we do. We're constantly building models, and then I build a case study for that. So the next time I'm in La Jolla, let's just say, I can figure out, oh, here's the list price. Let me pull the case study that I have from my last property, and then I can easily make those adjustment factors.
And when we're talking about getting those appraisals, done quickly, I know that you and your team is just working overtime. Agents wanted the appraisal yesterday. How can we better streamline appraisals?
Everyone is backed up these days. And what people may not know is that there's a third party between myself and Oscar and his team, right? And they're appraisal management companies. So usually an appraisal gets bid out for a job. So, the management company wants to know essentially how much will you do this appraisal for? What's your fee and what's your turnaround time? So depending if I have, my team and I have been doing 120, 130 appraisals a month, we're super stacked. So, I think it's both the loan officer and the agent that can coach their client to say, hey, this is going to take a couple weeks to get back. Because it usually takes me about a week to get an appraisal back, unless like there's a rush order that's ordered that can help with the flow because the money is better. Let's be honest. So the higher the fee, of course, the appraiser wants to take the job. The lower the fee, it's probably something in this market we're not looking at. It's all about demand. So supply and demand.
And Oscar, chime in here. Joining us now is Oscar Gastelum, the president of Mortgage Hub, and also, as you heard at the top of the podcast, that intro, that he is also the sponsor of the podcast. You know that we have all these shortened contingencies, right? As agents, we have 15-day loan contingencies, no appraisals. So you have the agents calling you, where's my appraisal? Where's my appraisal? When are we going to get it? Because even if you remove the loan appraisal contingency, the loan still has to come in. Correct. So it goes hand in hand. And it just kind of boggles my mind why sellers don't understand, okay, yes, this looks like a cash offer, but it's really not because there's still a loan on it and you need the financing. So talk to us about how you've been dealing with that.
It starts from the time that order comes in, meaning, the purchase contract comes in, the fees are disclosed, we disclose to the borrower, then the order goes in. So you can talk 2 days, you can talk 6 hours, right? It really just depends. And that's why I always say we can lose, especially if we have a 10-day appraisal contingency, which normal turn times are about 10 days for an appraisal. That clock doesn't start ticking until we have what we need in order to put the order in. The other layer where we're actually dealing with this right now, where the appraisal order went in, right? It goes to the AMC, the appraisal management company. It was assigned to an appraiser, but the appraiser never picked up the order. So we lost 5 days, right? So now it becomes a rush. So yeah, there are many layers. And then there's a misconception that the lenders don't want to appraise in the home. Which it's not the lender, it's the appraiser, right? And the comps are the comps, is what I always say.
I love how Oscar's putting this all in the appraisers.
Yeah.
Well, but it goes back to the facts, right? I mean, that's really what
true.
It comes down to. It comes down to the facts. It's not, you said it clearly. It's not your personal opinion. The comps are the comps of the comps. So you're just providing or gathering all the data. The data has to be there. There's that misconception that it's supply and demand. If someone's willing to pay for it, then that's what it's worth. Yeah, if they're buying it cash, maybe. But if there's a loan behind it, then obviously, yes, there's very likely going to be an appraisal.
That's a really good point. And I want to add to that because I think people don't understand the difference between market price and market value.
Yeah.
Okay, market price is what someone actually pays for. Market value is what, generally speaking, the market under normal circumstances,
exactly.
arm's length transactions.
And that could be here's an apple. I'm selling you the apple for $5. And there was a famous TikTok that's going around. What do you mean that apple is $10 now? What do you mean? It was just $1, but now it's $10.
Yeah.
So that can be really frustrating. So how do you keep up with all of these trends? The purchase trends of this market.
A lot of research. We all have access to the same information. How we determine that is it varies between appraiser and realtor. Really simply, even how a realtor markets a property, price per square foot. Okay, it's a 2,000 square foot house. It's $1,000 a square foot. Okay, this property's worth $2 million. But as an appraiser, we have to break up that $1,000 per square foot into units of comparison, and that has to do with the condition, the location, the site area, the views, the quality of construction. So it's broken down in maybe 20 different parts. So what happens is, not only just supporting the trend that's happening, I think that's a little bit more easily done, but it's how does a property even inflate, or how do you support that based on, a history, because closed sales, right? So it's a combination of closed sales, what happened last month versus the property trends that's going to happen this following month. But then we're kind of the eyes and the ears to the lender. So we have to explain that all to the lender. And I think that's where people get a little upset with appraisers. They go, hey, if they want to pay $100,000 over asking, how come the appraisal just can't come in? Because the bank is relying on our credibility to saying, is their investment sound at $100,000 over asking, or what is a true number? So it's a cat and mouse game between appraisers in the market, I would say.
And just kind of continuing on that. So how can the agents prepare, their, buyers for their appraisals not coming in at value?
Well, I think it starts in that listing appointment, right? So you may have sellers that are they're a little bit overly happy about what's happening in the market. They may look at Zillow or their neighbor's house, go, oh, that sold for such and such amount. Oh, my house can sell like that. And it looks nothing like that property. And you have agents that maybe are not so seasoned that they just want to get the listing so bad that they just agree with everything. And then they wait until the ninth inning to say, well, the appraisal is not going to come in. If agents all have access to the MLS, what I say is look at the trend. If you look at, let's say 92103, right? Now 92103 encompasses maybe 3 different markets. It's Mission Hills, a little bit of Bankers Hill, and Hillcrest, right? So when you look at the market growth, you have to specify that not just by neighborhood, but also by size. So appraisal guidelines is, okay, the price per square, the gross living area is 20%, right? So if you have a 2,000 square foot house, the range that appraisers are looking at between 1,600 square feet and 2,400 square feet. Now, if you're looking at market growth, you want to stay within that 20% for your property. You can't be in Hillcrest and try to take advantage of the Mission Hills market by saying, well, 92103 just went up, X amount of dollars. Yes, as a whole, but not in your sub market or your sub neighborhood. So just get good at what you do. You have to nerd out a little bit about, okay, this is where my property is located. Here's the surrounding neighborhood. What has this neighborhood done? And I think that by educating your clients is going to make everything go much more smoothly.
And Kosal, one of the things from the lending perspective of what I've seen is, like you said, take responsibility, right? It actually starts with the listing agent as well, because it's that idea that, hey, if I'm going to list this property, like you said, you can't unsee the list price. If the list price is $600,000 and the property ends up selling for $700,000, what a lot of my agents are doing is like saying, if they know that this property is not worth more than $650,000, right? They're addressing that right up front with the buying side, not actually closing their eyes to, hey, an offer's coming in and we'll just kind of cross that bridge when we get to it, and saying, well, they waive the appraisal and then you're fine. They still have to address like, okay, listen, if your client's willing to buy this property at $700,000, we're more than willing to sell it. But the elephant in the room is we know that this is not going to comp out for more than $650,000. So here's the deal. If your client's putting 20% down, is willing to put 20% down of $700,000, granted, we know they have 20% down of $650,000, of course, but show us that they have the difference of $50,000, assuming that's the case. Now, we've actually had that where the appraisal actually comes in at $675,000 and there's only a $25,000 difference and the deal still works. But we address that right up front. And we're on the selling side, meaning my buyer is also selling their property, and we're addressing these things up front because we know what are the things that can happen. So there's that thing also where getting these appraisal contingencies removed, helping the buyer truly understand what position it can put them in. And then I always say it's the verbiage, right? When we say the value didn't come in. Well, the appraisal is the value, right? Yeah. It's giving us the value. It just didn't come in at price.
And when we're talking about that $25,000 gap, you're not, and that's the explanation. That's another, that's when the lender comes in and has to really talk to the buyer and explain you're not bringing $25,000 to the table at the end of close, and kind of give us some, like an example.
So I actually prepared for that question. So there is that misconception, right? And that's the advantage of a client putting 10, 15, 20% down or more, because it gives us, the lender, a little bit more wiggle room to restructure the loan if and when needed. So the example that I'm giving is if someone was buying the property for $600,000, right? Putting 20% down, of course, that's $120,000 down payment, right? The buyer is willing to invest $120,000 for down payment. Let's just say the property comes in, the value comes in at $550,000. Normally people freak out, and I'm getting the calls and saying, hey, my buyer needs to come in now with $50,000 more. And the buyer's going, whoa, that's a lot of money. They weren't prepared for that. Well, it's not always the case, because when you're having a buyer that's willing to put 20% down, again, $120,000, that 20% can now be readjusted to 15% in my example, right? At 15% down at $550,000, that's $82,500. Hopefully I don't lose you guys here. So now we're only talking, there's a difference in down, right? About $3,750. So the difference between the down payment and the value is really in this
12,000 or something,
12,500.
Okay.
So it's not a $50,000 swing.
But that's only with a conventional loan. It's not for the 3% convention. There's 3% down conventional. There's FHA 3%. So it's
I would
only
say
for
anything less than 10% down, it makes it a little bit more complex. Not to say that it's not possible, but it can be. Now every scenario is different, but it can be a little bit more complex. So that's the advantage of having a buyer who's willing to put a little bit more down. Now, granted, that's also assuming that they qualify from an income to debt perspective, right?
Right. I know you have to always put that caveat.
It's all like, it all kind of comes into play.
And so Sidney, kind of wrapping up the whole appraisal kind of thing, what can sellers do? I mean, do they even have to do anything in this market to increase their value? Because I really think that just everything and anything is selling.
True. Everything is selling. It depends how much they want to pull out of the market. As far as how much do you want your property to increase, right? So there's various things that they can do. Is they can be super nosy. The next time there's a listing in their neighborhood, go inside, look at your neighbor's property. You know what size your home is. You know what you've done to your property, and you're looking at the market, because the market is the buyer, what they're willing to pay for. So those sellers can actually say, well, our home is not quite like this property. This one is way more over improved than ours. Well, then you're probably not going to get this price, right? But there is ways that they can, consult an appraiser and saying, hey, I want to do X, Y, Z. Does it pencil out? If I invest 30 grand, will I receive 60,000 in the market, right? So that's a smart play. If you're going to invest 30 grand and only get 30 grand back, don't do anything. It doesn't pencil out. So, buyers are always asking me, or sellers are always asking me, what can I do to increase my value? And I just tell them all the time, be nosy. Go look at those list prices.
Watch all your videos that you do.
Yeah, of course they can hire me, right? Or I just overload them with information so much so that they go, it's overwhelming, just come to my house, right? And I do quite a bit of that. But yeah, I mean, look, the market is ridiculous, but I've seen it before, and it's actually really fun because it's all about math. It makes it very, very simple. And we're not even talking about like multifamily, which multifamily I think is easier to appraise than a single family because it's all about the income. Whereas, and you're just looking at income factors, the GRMs and things of that nature, gross month multiplier for all your listeners out there. Whereas single family homes is very emotional. It's very subjective. Although we use objective data to make adjustments, what one person wants and another person receives, it's quite different. So
when do you expect the madness to ease up, or is this our new normal?
It's going to be a different madness in my experience, in my opinion, rather. What I think is happening is you have people that, first of all, the Airbnb market is, I won't say it's done, but they're going to regulate it heavily, right? So the number of vacation rentals are going to go down. A lot of people invested in many, many homes for the simple fact that they can take advantage of the vacation rentals. So if that is being regulated heavily in San Diego and other areas around Southern California, the vacation areas, whether it's Palm Springs or the mountains or things like that, and people have been in rent moratoriums for the past 14, 15 months, they probably want to either get rid of those properties when it comes back because no one wants a long-term rental. So I think a mixture between the vacation rental homes hitting the market. Also, look, money's been cheap the last year. I mean, I refinance for 2%. And so I think a lot of people with maybe unsure jobs in the next 12 to 24 months may have already pulled out 150K, out of their equity. But if your overhead is 4 or 5 grand a month, 75,000 in a year goes fast. And if you don't see your scenario changing, I see that those properties are going to hit the markets. People are going to say, you know what? Let's go live with brother, sister, mom, cousin. Let's go maybe build an ADU and invest that 250K in an ADU, sell this property or let it go. And those homes are going to hit the market. So it's going to be a different kind of market. I think it's going to be it's going to change it to the buyer's market. It's great for buyers. And who knows what's going to happen with rates. So yes, usually when the rates are up, prices are down and vice versa. And this market is just rates are low, prices are up. Everything is just bananas. But as an appraiser standpoint, it's going to stay busy. Real estate will continue to stay busy. It'll just be different, how we value things. So
yeah, and I appreciate your insight. It's about time that it levels it out. It's been a seller's market for more than a year, and it's time for the buyers to have something thrown at them, right?
I think it's been a seller's market for the past maybe like 5, 6 years,
right. But it's really gone on steroids.
It's
on
ridiculous,
steroids now, where I used to have, I don't think I've ever written an offer. I think there was only one, and all the offers I've ever written that didn't have another, like a multiple, counter. So this has been going on for years, I understand, but the last year it has been to a point where it's just really an emotional roller coaster, being on the side as an agent with the buyers and the sellers and seeing the disappointment after disappointment. It really hurts, that they're not able to get the home that they would like, and they don't understand, it's like after 10 times of doing the same thing, you're hoping for something different, right?
Yeah. And I mean, Kaushal, you and I have talked about the amount of inventory in the market. It's like less than 30 days. With a healthy market, it's 5 to 6 months.
We need
right?
6 months. In the size of this city, in San Diego, we need 6+ months. And are we really going to get 5 months worth of inventory based on the things you've said? I don't think so. So when people always ask me, and even if the rates go up, and this is the debate, the rates go up, there are still people who will be able to afford to buy. My parents bought a home when the rates were double digits, for years. I mean, and we've always lived in homes. So,
and that's the thing, Kaushal. I mean, we've already seen a slight adjustment just in the beginning of this year, and people right away freak out. And historically, I always say, even if they go up, which they will, at least about another quarter between now and the end of the year. Granted, I don't have the crystal ball, but that's kind of like where the math is kind of landing. We're still going to be historically low. So a lot of people are emotionally driven by rate, but like I've always said, there's so much more to purchasing a home than your interest rate. I mean, you began to say it, right? Like people were buying when it was 23%. Now, granted, prices are a lot higher now, but I've always said, even if they went up a full point, like where are we sitting? Like in the high 3s, low 4s? I mean, money is still cheap.
Very.
And people need to understand that. And that's what I've always said. We need to not sell rate, right? Granted, the market is the market. Anything one way or lopsided one way or the other is always unhealthy long term, right? And people understand where it's been easy for some folks, it's definitely been a lot harder for many. And there is going to be a new norm, right? It's going to be a healthier market. We're going to go through this quote unquote correction as we continue to go through this correction, right? It's just a matter of like how we're going to do business, how we're preparing our clients. It's going to definitely, it's taken us, right? Kaushal, it's taken us a lot more work. We're doing a lot more work, but I've always said that the right house is the one that's going to stick.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what we always say. It's what's meant to be, but it's these cliches and, the universe is conspiring with you. Sometimes after, the 7th offer, 8th offer you've written in like 3 weeks, sometimes it's hard to believe that. But I agree with you. And, I have a couple of questions just to round out because we only have a few minutes left. What does it really mean when a buyer is waiving all of their contingencies on their loan? I mean, we're seeing that so much more than we did a year ago, 2 years ago, or even 3 years ago. That was not happening. So kind of really explain what that means to us.
Yeah, well, first off, it's not up to the lender to coach or advise the client when to remove loan contingencies, right? We give the data. Based off that data, they need to make the decision, right? What's that data? Meaning, is a loan approved? what are the conditions? Because it's always a conditional approval by the underwriter. What are the items needed? Now, granted, if it's, hey, I just need an updated pay stub and I need a clear copy of your driver's license, some of the knickknacks, right? Then there's no reason why they couldn't remove loan contingencies. Now, if there's a condition on there that has to do with the cash or questioning income that can affect their debt to income ratio, that's where maybe I can step in and say, well, just, you know what, just hang tight. But I can't technically tell someone, say yes to remove loan contingencies. So obviously by them removing that, that's peeling away a layer for the seller for a reason for them to back out. So they can't say, hey, I can't qualify because I'm not getting a loan or I'm not getting the right loan. They're removing that right from that perspective. But the lender, again, cannot advise the client to not. I will tell them, to remove. I will tell them not to if I felt that there was something at risk.
And we keep hearing about appraisals being waived. How is that? Is it kind of like the luck of the draw?
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Less work for Sidney.
Yeah, and that's a conversation we can have because that's pretty interesting. So, and everyone says they have a guy, right? Well, I had a conversation just a couple of months ago with someone. Well, my lender, waives the appraisals for my clients, and I had to help the agent understand. Say, you understand, it's not the lender making the choice and saying, hey, I like you. I'm gonna waive your appraisal. It doesn't work that way. It's not the lender. Right? All the lenders, well, not all, majority of the lenders run their files through an automated system called DU, right? Direct underwrite. The DU, when ran with property, will tell you if the property qualifies for an appraisal waiver. Just because it says, hey, it qualifies, if the buyer says, hey, I want an appraisal, we get an appraisal. Now, it hasn't happened. We get the waiver. They're normally like, hey, if you guys are good with it, we're good with it. Yeah. That's normally the case. But it's never the end all because that normally happens right at the beginning of the transaction. Mm-hmm. If anything changes drastically and we have to rerun DU a week or two later, that DU all of a sudden says, hey, we now need an appraisal because it can happen. It hasn't happened to me, but it can happen. Then everyone's jumping through hoops to try to get an appraisal. So it's in short, it's not the lender's decision. It's through an automated system called direct underwrite. That's who tells us if the property qualifies for an appraisal waiver.
And what happens if there's already been an appraisal that's been done, like FHA or VA appraisal already done on a property in the last 3 months?
Great question. So if the property's ever been in contract, right? You always hear me ask, has it been in contract? Has it fallen out? And if so, what was the reason and what type of loan? Because if there was an FHA appraisal or a VA appraisal done to the property, that appraisal is tied to that property. And Sidney, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's up to like 6 months, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay, 6 months. So what happens is that we may have a client, let's just say that property was an escrow, it fell out for whatever reason. Let's just say the value was lower than the contract price. The seller says, no. I had offers much higher. They cancel on that buyer. All of a sudden they want to come back to us, accept our offer. Well, our offer is a VA client as well. We're going to run into the same exact thing because as soon as we try to pull a case number on that property, they're going to tell us that there was an appraisal done on that home 30 days ago. And that value, that appraisal is attached to that property if you have another VA client. Now, granted, if it was under contract with a VA buyer and it cancels and all of a sudden we have a conventional buyer or an FHA buyer, then it's a whole new appraisal. But those appraisals, FHA or VA, are attached to the property for 6 months.
Okay, guys, I can talk to you for hours. We both don't, we don't have the time, but I wish we could go on for an hour or so. But in closing, do you guys have anything else that I may not have asked you, but you really have been chomping at the bits to add? We covered some really good ground here.
That's a loaded question. I don't know how to narrow that down to 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great things at FHA because they don't want to lose out on loans recently that they've changed as far as the growth in the market, because usually they weren't not taking any flip and fixes or fix and flips. Yep. So you have to wait 90 days for a fix and flip. I'm going to talk really fast. I know we're running out of time, but now FHA has removed that contingency for fix and flip. They will, you can go ahead and flip a property and now market it for FHA. We just have to add additional comps on the pending or listing side to show the trend. So before
That's
FHA,
huge.
that's really huge. FHA says, nope, you have to wait 90 days before it can be eligible, FHA eligible. Now it can be immediately. We just have to support it with more data. So
Oscar, are you going to let Sidney one up you there and not
No,
give us a nugget?
you know what? It goes back to the lending aspect. I mean, I always emphasize the importance of getting fully pre-approved. You know, if it's not with me, talk to an advisor who's seasoned, who's going to better prepare you, and understand what are the challenges in today's market. I think when you understand what the challenges are, you could be better prepared. When you're better prepared, the outcome is going to be a lot greater. There's no doubt that the challenges will go away, but you're going to be better prepared.
Yeah, I can't really thank you enough for giving us some great insight. I just, if you ever need an appraisal, Sidney Loiseau, he's awesome. He also does a lot on Instagram. He posts more videos than I do, which is awesome.
AKA Rick Fox, right?
Yeah.
I'll take
He's
it.
so good looking. And Oscar Gastelum, we've been working together for years. He's my go-to lender, president of Mortgage Hub. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And remember, if you're, in the market to buy a home, listen, I've gotten lots of home buyers, families into a home this year, so it's happening, it just takes a little bit of patience. But if you're looking to buy a home or even sell a home, we'd love to help you. I have a great team behind me. Give us a call, 858-244-3298. Again, that number, 858-244-3298. Thanks so much for listening to all or part of my podcast, Buying Your Piece of Paradise with Koshal. Thanks so much. Ciao.